I have been downgraded at my job. He arrived home with a gloomy expression. Pardon? I nearly spilled the tea I was drinking. His company's performance has been subpar lately, and I was aware of significant personnel changes due to restructuring. However, I never expected it to affect Scott directly. Nevertheless, I believe it's crucial to stand by him during times like this as his spouse. Well, I suppose we just had some unfortunate luck. Times are challenging, and I'm employed as well, so don't worry, I replied cheerfully. My name is Catherine, and I am 50 years old. Currently, I am working full-time in the administrative office. I reside with my husband Scott, who is 2 years my senior, my high school sophomore daughter Julia, and my 72-year-old mother-in-law Ethel. Well, Ethel and I don't always agree, but since I work outside the home, we only encounter each other when I'm home, so I've chosen not to concern myself with it. I informed my daughter, "Your dad is feeling a bit low because of the demotion, but try to behave normally around him." However, Scott began to express his frustrations, and that expression, well, it's often said that people express their frustration on those closest to them, those they trust the most, and indeed, all of it was aimed at me. The following day, as I was cleaning the hallway during my day off, he walked by and suddenly remarked, "You've gained weight since we got married, haven't you?" Huh? Well, I am 50 after all. Even the gynecology brochures mention that women tend to gain weight around menopause. But according to my business's health checkup, I responded, "I'm not overweight." After that, he said, "Forget the health checkup. Your body shape is too unattractive. You're just being lazy. If you're overweight, I'm ashamed to be seen with you and your barrel-like figure." I was speechless when my spouse suddenly made such a cruel remark. Then he said, "unattractive," and locked himself in his room. What? What's happening all of a sudden? I pinched my own side. I can pinch it, and when I pinch it with my thumb and forefinger, it fits snugly with the curve, and I can tell that I've gained more than enough. But why now, all of a sudden? I felt as if I had been pierced by an arrow that had come flying at me out of the blue, so much so that I forgot I was holding the magic eraser in my hand. It was that much of a shock. The eraser slipped from my hand, clattering loudly as it fell onto the hallway floor. From that day on, Scott's attitude towards me became increasingly harsh. To make matters worse, my mother-in-law seemed to have listened to that weekend's argument, and she jumped on it. Then the power doubled. As I was climbing the stairs with a laundry basket intending to hang the clothes, my mother-in-law descended from the second floor. No, she didn't descend. She just waited at the top of the stairs. She remarked things like, "Oh, how awful. If only you weren't so fat, we could pass each other on the stairs. I wouldn't have to wait here because only one person can pass due to your obesity." Moreover, when I served deep-fried chicken for supper, she would remark, "Isn't this what's causing you to gain weight?" and then take away my plate. She would propose that the three of us who are not obese should eat. My gynecologist mentioned that after reaching middle age, one either becomes overweight or loses weight, but my mother-in-law was on the slender side. My mother-in-law was thin like a desiccated tree. However, I was still able to endure her minor persecution. Such annoyances had become routine, so I was somewhat accustomed to it. What truly hurt me was my spouse's conduct. Following that incident, my husband Scott ceased speaking to me. There was no expression of gratitude or acknowledgement of the delicious meal. Even when I served him breakfast, he simply ate silently and then left. He would quietly enter and exit the bathroom. We still shared the bedroom, but he would just turn his back and fiddle with his smartphone. I couldn't bear being treated as if I were invisible. One evening in the bedroom, I mustered my courage and inquired, "Hey, did I do something to warrant being disregarded?" He replied, "Not really, but I just don't want to converse with anyone other than humans." He proceeded to say, "I don't want to be seen as a family with someone this overweight. If you care about me, lose some weight." I was disheartened by his words. But it's unavoidable after middle age, and you understand, right? Even though I walk 1.2 miles for commuting, I'm making an effort in my own way. Indeed, I was endeavoring to combat the weight gain due to aging, but he callously turned away, remarking, "If the outcomes aren't evident, It's equivalent to not making an effort. Cease conversing with me from now on. After that, he genuinely ceased acknowledging me. My mother-in-law persisted in mocking me about my body weight, and whenever meat, produce, or rice were served, she would inquire, "Are you permitted to consume that? Are you conscious?" As a result, I ended up only consuming salads and steamed vegetables. Scott simply observed all of this silently, manipulating his chopsticks without uttering a word. It seems like my marriage may be coming to an end. I started packing my things during my free time. If Scott is going to ignore me completely, then perhaps it would be preferable to simply vanish. When I informed my daughter, "I'm contemplating returning to my parents' residence," she replied, "Yeah, I understand. I've witnessed Grandma and Dad constantly targeting you during meals. It's difficult to witness. I'll accompany you, Mom. We can reside at your parents' place, and I can still attend high school from there. And now, tomorrow marks the commencement of the demotion I've been aware of for some time, right after the winter hiatus." Scott approached with a grin, saying, "Let's have a drink, everyone. Just this once. Starting tomorrow, life without subordinates will begin for him." I wonder if he finds that intolerable. But at this point, I've lost the desire to go along with it. Even his forced smile is exasperating. Scott suggests, "Let's have a nightcap at dinner. I'll prepare wine spritzers." This may be the first occasion he has spoken to since the day after the declaration of his reduction. He includes, "Julia can have juice, and I will prepare a wine spritzer for you as well, Catherine." Then he positions the ready wine spritzers at 3 locations on the table. Unusual, why all of a sudden? When Scott turned his back momentarily to search for the TV remote, I sniffed the beverage he had concocted. What? I detected it faintly, but it was unmistakably that scent. I identify the faint aroma because I've utilized it in cooking previously. How could he contemplate making me consume this? I refuse to tolerate it any longer. My mother-in-law's persecution being disregarded by my spouse. I'll reciprocate to them all. The wine spritzer pushed me over the edge. "I'm sorry. Could you retrieve the Camembert cheese from the fridge, Scott? It's from a local dairy farm, and it's truly delightful. I'm grateful for the family time. Could you fetch it?" Pondering he should at least do that much when I showed delight at family time, Scott proceeded towards the fridge. While he was away and before my mother-in-law and daughter settled, I exchanged my drink with the one on the seat to my right. The right seat. It was Ethel's seat. Scott returned with the cheese. "Well, now that we've got the snacks ready, I'll summon Julia and mother-in-law." I stated loudly enough for them to hear, "Dinner's ready." The 2 of them made their way to the dining room and took their seats. Just a regular dinner, except I didn't have any meatloaf or cornbread salad, stewed chicken soup, and cheese and wine spritzer. Julia was drinking juice. Let's dine. Julia was the one who ended the silence. Scott and my mother-in-law stayed quiet. I sipped on the wine spritzer Scott had prepared. He was observing me closely. I grinned and said, "Yes, it's good." "Ha." Scott muttered something under his breath, but I disregarded him. I delved into the salad and then took another sip of the wine spritzer. Suddenly, a stream of red liquid shot out from my mother-in-law. It reminded me of Godzilla's fire breath. "Wait, what, Grandma? What happened?" My daughter stood up, and some of the liquid splashed her salad. "Did you choke? Are you okay?" Julia grabbed a towel and quickly returned. But as she handed the towel to my mother-in-law, who wiped her mouth, she exclaimed in shock, "Grandma, your mouth. It looks like spicy cod roe." My mother-in-law began to panic. "Hey you, he put in my drink." She shrieked and lunged at me. I coldly brushed her hand away. "It wasn't me. Scott made it." Being brushed off for the first time and hearing that Scott was responsible for the dish must have been quite a shock. "What?" My mother-in-law screamed, her lips still covered in sauce, then turned to look at Scott. He was shaking. I leaned towards Scott, resting my hand on the table to exert some pressure. "You thought you could hide it in the wine spritzer, didn't you?" "I could smell it a little because I've used it before." "That was a drop of hell, wasn't it?" "A drop of hell. I had bought it at the food fair in Alabama. It's not as famous as death salsa, but because it has a suggestion of lime, I preferred it more for its cozy flavor. That suggestion of lime was what I detected, which means he blended a significant amount into the beverage. My mother-in-law must not have noticed due to the aroma of the wine spritzer or thought the lime scent was part of the seasoning. That's probably why she drank it. But regardless, this was a seriously spiteful prank. Extremely cruel. Wait, Dad did that? Why Julia wore a surprised expression? I actually intended for Catherine to drink it, Scott confessed. You should swap it with yours, foaming at the mouth. My mother-in-law is also out of line. As soon as she found out it was meant for me, she wants to pass it on to me. No way am I switching to that dangerous beverage. I said in a hushed voice, maintaining my pressure on Scott. And then I cornered him. Explain why on earth you thought of doing something so outrageous. He replied, you were staying plump, and spicy food boosts metabolism, so I thought I'd make it. Wow, that's pathetic. What a weak excuse. I laughed mockingly. Did he really think that explanation would be acceptable? Utterly embarrassing, pressured, my husband hesitated and slightly moved his chair back. I'm not crazy. This is a valid reason to support your diet. Here, swap this with your cup and drink it. I made it for you. I closed in. The distance, my husband retreated. What are you saying? As the one who made it, you should taste it to see if it's delicious. Come on. When I arose, I picked up the mug with a drop of something very unpleasant in front of my mother-in-law and tossed it in front of my husband. I pushed it away. Then I brought my face closer again. After disregarding me and treating me like air for so long, did you think I would genuinely drink something you said you would prepare with a smile out of nowhere? Didn't it occur to you in your empty head? Isn't it too immature? Come on, taste it as the one who cooked it. You should take responsibility. I banged the table. At that sound, my husband, thinking he could escape with a little more backpedaling, stood up from his chair and retreated. After a tense silence, drink it, a soft voice said. My husband and I turned to the source of the voice. The voice came from our daughter Julia. Julia began to speak as if she was squeezing out the words. Taking your frustration out on Mom, who supports you the most when things don't go well at work, and repeating cruel treatments. This is like a childish prank. I might not be supposed to say this to my parents, but it's too immature and unbearable to watch. Our daughter stood up as well, and she continued facing her father. Is it wrong to be overweight? Mom wakes up early and walks to work, and she also brings lunch, so it's not like she's not trying. Then she turned to her grandmother, and you're going along with it, taking away my mom's dinner like fried chicken. What Grandma is doing is like middle school seniors and juniors. It's embarrassing. Those terms, a flustered Ethel started to make a bewildered explanation. That's not it. I'm just concerned that Julia's mother won't gain any more weight. She must want to be seen favorably by her granddaughter. In fact, but this time Julia was finished speaking to Ethel for the moment. She turned back to her father. Mom goes to the gynecologist every month and keeps herself active. But despite all that, Dad just ignores her because she's put on some weight. What's his deal? That atmosphere he creates by ignoring her makes the house feel so tense. Can't he see that? Even Colonel Sanders and Aunt Stella from the cookie advertisements are plump. There's a term called happy weight, you know. If she gets older and becomes a lovely grandmother like Aunt Stella, I'd be thrilled. When I have kids and she's become a grandma, wouldn't it be great to say, Mom, you've come to some happy weight, and laugh about it? That's my dream. Could you please not ruin it for me? Her gaze was cold as ice as she spoke matter-of-factly. However, her words warmed my heart like hot milk to go with cookies. It's a pitiful sight to see a father scorned by his own daughter. And one more thing, she directed her words at her father. If you're going to ignore someone because of the weight gain due to aging, you should realize that with your thinning hair, you could easily be overlooked yourself. The tension was palpable at the dinner table. Her cutting words had brought a chill to the living room. It felt so cold. You'd think even a banana would become frozen. It appeared she had expressed all her thoughts. After exhaling loudly, she looked at me. That's sufficient, Mom. It's time to release it. It will be more beneficial for you. Her words surprised me. It would be more beneficial if I release it? Yes, you should release it. As I mentioned before, my aspiration is to witness you embracing my child, saying, "You've gained some happy weight," and chuckling. For my benefit, I want you to be joyful because that's part of my aspiration. So please release it. Her words warmed my heart. Every single thing she said brought me so much joy that I didn't mind being disregarded by my spouse, the criticism from my mother-in-law, or the alcohol problem. Tears of warmth flowed down my cheeks. Yes, you're correct. My sight became hazy with tears. "Hurry up, Mom." She tapped my back and nudged me gently. "Oh, all right." I went to the kitchen and retrieved a document I had concealed for some time. "What?" my spouse exclaimed in surprise. After about a month of being disregarded, I started thinking, I have my bags packed. Let's each go our separate ways. I presented the divorce papers with only my name inscribed on them. I just wanted you to shed some weight. If you had slimmed down as I requested, I would have been satisfied. I only realized it was venting after Julia pointed it out, but since you didn't lose any weight, I thought I'd torment you more. I didn't mean for this toe. I didn't anticipate this to occur. My spouse started to panic. It's on those who didn't notice until the situation became serious, and the cause of their upset was extremely immature. My daughter Julia responds sharply. Living without her charming granddaughter is no laughing matter for my mother-in-law. It appears that in a panic, my mother-in-law Ethel interrupts. Hey, Julia, you want to continue living with us. Your grandmother's, don't you? In a voice as gentle as petting a cat. To this, Julia says, I refuse. I don't want to breathe the same air as people who act like adolescents anymore. Dismissing Ethel's plea. Hold on. Okay, I understand. I'll accept it as you say. I'll take responsibility as the one who cooked it. Scott picks up the glass placed before him and gulps it all down at once. Scott, just like Ethel earlier, spews a stream of the red liquid from his mouth, resulting in a striking set of lobster-like lips. There, see, I took responsibility, right, Julia? Julia takes a picture of both of them with their lobster lips on her phone and says, both of you, so uncool. Mom, let's go, before exiting the living room. Yeah, I choose to follow her. So what's left behind is a dinner table splashed here and there with wine cocktail mixed with a drop of hell and a husband and mother-in-law with red lobster lips. I returned to my parents' house with Julia. When we explained the situation at home, both my mother and father were furious and went to confront Scott and Ethel. They brought back the divorce papers and I ended up getting divorced. My ex-husband Scott has hit rock bottom in his profession and concluded up spending his remaining years without any notable accomplishments. Evidently, he had a tendency of disregarding things he didn't like even with his subordinates, and that resulted in his demotion, which I recently heard about. Conversely, my former mother-in-law Ethel, who had been challenging and seldom went outdoors, appears to be trapped in a deadlock in a two-person household. Eventually, I received a call stating, if you and Julia were here, it wouldn't be so stagnant. This is evidenced by the 17 years since Julia was born, and we resided together. Please come back. I'll cease neglecting you, but there's no way I'm returning. Better put on weight while you can. Once you have grandchildren, you'll have more physical work to do. My mother jokes with a smile. That's accurate. Today, as always, I'm walking to my workplace. En route, my boss drives by and halts the car, offering, want a ride? No thanks, I'm on a diet. Just get in, Catherine. Yes, I found a new boyfriend. Both of us have been divorced once, but because of that, we've both been through a lot and understand each other well. Dieting is beneficial and all, but it would be a predicament if you're late, he says while driving. I've never been late before, I reply, puffing up my cheeks. He glances my way and pokes my puffed-up cheek with his finger. Give me the time you saved by riding in the car today for our conversation, he says, ever the talkative boyfriend.